Hi everybody, Karen Fabian here, founder of Bare Bones Yoga. And I want to do a quick video for you today to just cover a couple of fundamental concepts in your efforts to learn anatomy. And these are things that I really weave between and around and really form the foundation of all the trainings that I do with teachers, especially in my signature program called the Blueprint Learning Program. And you can get on the wait list for this simply by going to my website, barebonesyoga.com, and clicking the link to be on the wait list. And I'll let you know when I open enrollment next. Now, when I teach the Blueprint Learning Program, and what I'm going to share with you here in this video, are 10 steps to understanding anatomy. And the reason this can be so transformative for teachers is because many times when you're trying to learn anatomy kind of on your own, maybe you've taken a 200-hour training and you know you've got some knowledge gaps, and you're trying to fill in those gaps, but you're not really sure what knowledge you need because, let's face it, how are you going to know what you don't know? So you start to buy some books and you start to watch some videos, and pretty soon all you feel is more overwhelmed. And so what I'm going to give you today are 10 steps to learning anatomy. It's basically how I chunk out the big topic of anatomy into 10 discrete parts. So the first step is understanding key anatomical terminology. So that's where flexion and extension, internal and external rotation, planes of the body, that's where that falls. The next thing is understanding anatomical position, what it is, why we care about it as yoga teachers, and why it can be so helpful for us, especially as we're starting out when it comes to giving effective cues. The next parts are understanding key bones, key joints, and key muscles. It's really important that we're able to understand and articulate the detail in these sections. From there, we move on to looking at muscles in poses. This is where we can analyze a pose and be able to explain what muscles are concentrically contracting and maybe even a little bit of what muscles are eccentrically lengthening. From there, we move on to an understanding of what is fascia and what is the technique to keep fascia healthy, known as myofascial release. Why do we talk about this as yoga teachers? Why do we learn this as part of the 10 steps? Because if we're trying to understand the structure of the body, we've got to shine a spotlight on fascia and understand what it is and how it contributes to the overall structure and movement of the body. The next step is understanding how to apply anatomy to teaching through several different common scenarios that come up. So this is where things like, I'm looking at my student and they're hunched over in Warrior One. Why might that be happening? Or I'm looking at my student in chair pose and they've got a big sway back and their butt sticking out. Why would that be happening? So this is applying anatomy to teaching. We then get into looking at red flags and modifications, and then the last piece is looking at sequencing and cues. So these are the 10 steps to breaking down the subject of anatomy into key parts. Now, I want to give you a couple of key things to think about when it comes to approaching anatomy studies in this way. When you learn anatomy in this way, what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to work backwards. And working backwards essentially means you truly understand what you're sharing with your students. So let me give you an example. What if I have somebody in Warrior Two and I'm asking them to open their left hip? But what if I don't really know what that means, but I've simply picked up that cue by listening to another teacher? Well, if you're learning anatomy in this fashion and according to my process, what you'll be able to do is essentially break that cue down into its discrete parts. And guess what? The discrete parts lie in all of these sections. So in this posture, Warrior Two, if you ask somebody to open their left hip a little more, you know that you're saying that because this left hip is in flexion and external rotation. Further, you'll also know that the muscles responsible for external rotation of the hip lie on the posterior side of the hip and essentially connect the sacrum to the femur. You'll further know that the muscles literally responsible for external rotation are muscles like the gemelli muscles, the obturator muscles, and the quadratus femoris. You'll additionally know that for those muscles to be doing the action of external rotation, they're concentrically contracting, which is a nod to the fact that the muscle fibers are moving closer together. Then you'll be able to take that knowledge and share it very effectively and in an easy to understand way by leveraging one of the cues frameworks that I offer teachers when I train them. That is giving an action cue, another action cue, and then an anatomy-based cue. And in this case here, what you could say is take your arms out wide, bend your front knee and let your hips drop. Now as you hold this pose, see if you can tuck your left sitting bone underneath you. This will create that movement known as external rotation, and you'll be using muscles on the back of your hip. One of them is your quadratus femoris. Can you feel anything there? Do you feel any contraction happening there? So that's an example of how you take all of this and how it culminates into your ability to be able to share anatomy with your students. And one of the things that's really interesting is that as you learn more about anatomy and how to share it with your students, you actually now have a platform to create better connections with your students. We often think of connection coming from being empathetic or sympathetic or talking about feelings. In actuality, understanding anatomy and how to share it with your students is a great way to build connection, because you'll literally be speaking to their bodies. And when they feel and experience that, that is, in essence, connection. So, to wrap this one up, I hope, number one, that this has been helpful for you. That's my main point in doing it. If you're out there doing self-study and you're confused about where to start, how to continue, I want you to use this as your framework for what kind of studying you're doing, what the topics are that you might be diving into. If you're feeling a little bit lost and you're looking for some coaching, some guidance, you'd be a perfect teacher to apply for my wait list, to get on my wait list for my signature program, the Blueprint Learning Program. When you go to my website, barebonesyoga.com, you'll see the link to get on the wait list. Every month I give teachers an opportunity to sign up. At least in this year I'll be doing it every month. And so I don't want you to miss out the next time I open the doors for enrollment. If you have any questions, leave them here on the video or send me an email at karen@barebonesyoga.com. If you like this kind of content, I would love for you to like this video and subscribe to my channel as well. Have a good one, and I'll see you on the next video here on my YouTube channel. Namaste.